Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. As among other things, we commemorate St. Patrick's Day today, March 17th. So if you're anywhere near an Irish pub in the course of the next 24 hours, you may want to sidle in up to the bar and order yourself an Irish whiskey and celebrate when the Irish saved civilization. Today is the commemoration of St. Patrick, who's the patron saint of Ireland. He lived in the 6th century. He was an extraordinary man. He was Irish. He was an adept in the Druidic orders. He was converted to Christianity, but he never quite gave up his Celtic roots. He traveled, he was a missionary. He came back to Ireland and began a lifelong campaign to Christianize Ireland. And one of the extraordinary accomplishments, I would say, of the Irish in their Christianization is that they never completely gave up their Celtic and their Druidic roots. That's particularly true of Saint Bridget, who was the nun, who was a Druidic priestess and a Christian nun, all at the same time. And I think that's why, if you read Cahill's book, How the Irish Saved Civilization, that was a particular characteristic of the Irish, is that they never lost their roots. They still believe in leprechauns and fairies. And if you've been to Ireland, as I have many times, you can feel the mystical quality of that land because they never denied it. And so I just want to celebrate the Irish and celebrate St. Patrick, St. Bridget, and the Irish people on this day. Before we begin, I want to also continue our conversations and reflections on what's happening in Ukraine. The world's attention is now focalizing on a phone call that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are going to have tomorrow in the aftermath of the Americans meeting the Russians in Riyadh and the Americans meeting the Ukrainians in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia over the last week. There's been conversation of a ceasefire, and Vladimir Putin on Friday in his the press conference, you may have noted it, said, a ceasefire, we need to think about it. We need to find out how exactly it's going to happen, what are the terms and conditions, who's going to monitor it. And in the meantime, we've got between 5,000 and 7,000 Ukrainian troops surrounded in the Kursk region, and they've got till 6 a.m. on Monday to either surrender or they're going to be destroyed. So that's where we are in Ukraine right now. There's conversations that swirl around, but the central reality, as I've said many times, when wars end, diplomacy that ends the war begins on the conditions on the battlefield. And the conditions on the battlefield are that the Russians are decisively winning. The Ukrainians have decisively lost. The Russians are pushing westward across all fronts. They've crossed over the last week or so the Oskol River on their way to the Dnieper. They've eliminated the Ukrainian troops from the Kursk region, all but at 1 or 2%. They've just taken Suzja, the last village that was claimed by the Ukrainians. And now they have thousands of Ukrainian troops surrounded, and Putin gave them till today to either surrender or be destroyed. And he talks to Trump tomorrow. So how this is all going to play out will be fascinating, heartbreaking, tragic beyond measure, because many more people will die on both sides, particularly the Ukrainian side, before this very tragic tale is brought to an end. But I think it is safe to say that we are now in the end game. And that's better than the beginning game, because the tragedy of war is that it wastes so many lives and so many resources and so much creative intelligence, so that when we get to the end game, at some basic level, we can all be thankful that the end, whatever it is nigh. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Humanity Rising. And now we want to turn to, I think, my favorite subject. And that is, while all this is going on, while we humans can't think of anything better to do with our genius than to kill each other and devise weapons and completely decimate the environment, the ETs have showed up. The extraterrestrials have descended from the heavens and from other dimensions for the last 75 years at a very minimum, and have been talking to humans and abducting humans and communicating in all kinds of ways, essentially to warn us about what we're doing and to beseech us to transform ourselves, and that they're ready basically to assist in this endeavor if we'll just wake up and learn the language of consciousness. We've dealt with this many times, but today we have a very special treat with Dr. Andrea Lani, who is an experiencer. He's a PhD in civil engineering. He's taught at Stanford. He's worked on projects at NASA, at NATO, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and rare among experiencers. As a scientist, he's also been trying to figure out scientific instrumentalities to measure what it is that he and other people are experiencing. Because, we in the West we're not capable of believing anything unless we can prove it to our rational mind. It's our greatest weakness, actually. It's paraded as our greatest strength, but it's actually our greatest weakness. Because what we know with our hearts, what we know with our intuition, can never be fully measured within the confines and the constraints of time, space, and causality. But we in the West struggle manfully forward to do so. Nevertheless, such is the predicament of the Western mind. And so we're going to spend some time now with Andrea Lani. Andrea, please come open up your video. And you're welcome to Humanity Rising. And Andrea is going to have a presentation. He's going to show some slides, and then I'll circle back at the end of the slides, and then we'll dialogue for the balance of the time. And then Dr. Lani will join the after chat for those of you who want a deeper dialogue. But Andrea, welcome to Humanity Rising, and I turn the program over to you.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Jim. I'm gonna share my screen to start with. Do you see my screen?
Yes, sir. All good.
So only a little correction. I'm actually an aerospace engineer, not a civil engineer. And this is relevant because actually I decided to do aerospace engineering after having had my first UFO encounters. encounter. So let's jump into it. Actually, I've had many more than one UFO encounter, but the very first one was in 1983. I'm actually born in Italy, and I was living in Italy. I was at the seaside at Celle Ligure, north west of Italy. And I was on a balcony with my parents, and suddenly we see this object appearing in front of the balcony at the same altitude as the balcony, maybe 10 meters in front of us, maybe even less. And this object was kind of metallic, glassy, but as soon as I look at it, it started spinning like like a flying turbine, thousands of RPMs, and also it started glowing. And while spinning, basically it was shrinking in size till it basically disappeared while emitting a flash of light. And at that point, I turned to my left. I asked my mother, did you see that? And she said, yes. And I said, well, what was that? And she said, well, maybe it was a falling star. Now, I was only 8 years old, but what I knew for sure is that what we had witnessed was not a falling star. And actually, I had to wait many years before having another encounter. The next one was in 2017. I was already in this house where you see me now. And that night, I was stargazing, something that I normally don't do. And while looking at the sky, I was I was basically asking in my mind, how cool would it be to have a similar experience as when I was a child? Now that I'm an aerospace engineer and I could look at details. And then after a few minutes, I go in my bedroom. There was my ex-girlfriend already lying on the bed on my right. And she made me notice a very strange kind of metallic squeaking sound, very high pitch, which was unusual because it was 1 o'clock in the night. And so that actually, caught my attention, and I kept my eyes open, and I was basically staring at the ceiling. And suddenly I see a ray of green light entering from the window, and in the matter of 1 second, the whole room was enlightened in bright green light, almost like daylight, but green. And so I jump to the window, I look outside, I pull the curtain, I look outside, and I see the two discs of bright green light moving together, maybe connected, maybe not. It was hard to see because it was really pitch black outside. And basically they flew over my backyard, and then they flew over the house of the neighbor. So I went upstairs to try to see past that, but I couldn't. And basically I can estimate the size of each disc. I mean, the diameter of each disc was probably around 2 meters, which is really pretty large, nothing like a drone or anything else. And they were flying quite low, no noise whatsoever. And well, my opinion is that somebody answered my call. And then, so this was in March 2017. In February 2018, I did the same experiment. This time I was looking on the same side of the house, but that night, I remember there were some stars, like 20, 30 stars, and especially the Orion belt was the one that caught my attention. And so I expressed the same desire to have a contact. What happened is that in the matter of what I perceived being 1 minute, the number of lights in the sky, I could say, went from 20 to thousands. At some point, I saw some sort of avalanche of lights appearing everywhere, from left to right, and it was kind of overwhelming. I opened the window to be sure to be awake. I also touched my wrist and something. I was like, this, looks like a dream. And then when I opened the window, I also saw some sort of purple fireball or orb crossing the Orion belt and disappearing. And this to me felt like some sort of mystical experience. And for me, was the turning point in my, let's say, interaction with this phenomenon. The day after, I tried again, but nothing happened. So I could see 20, 30 stars. And I stayed there probably half an hour, keeping on asking, well, can you do it again? Can you do it again? But nothing happened. So, I realized there is a way of interacting with them, but it's not that I can control it. And interestingly enough, after this experience, in the matter of few weeks, I had an accident at home. I broke my left ankle. I had to have surgery, and I got stuck home for 6 weeks. Very useful 6 weeks, because during these 6 weeks, I started researching the connection between spirituality and UFO. Something that I've never really been interested to do before. And so I got into, my interest into reincarnation, Akashic records, and psychic abilities started in that period. But then, since we are talking about UAP sightings, so later in 2020, I had the chance actually to catch my first one on camera. And you see it here on the right of the screen. It's a collection of videos and pictures. But first, let me explain the context. So I went to the UK to meet a friend. Even during the meeting, something happened in the sense that she gave me a Reiki session. And during the session, she went into, let's say, channeling state. She started channeling some entities which we were connecting before. And she even fell asleep during the channeling, and then she woke up again and she kept on channeling. So something already happened in London. But then it was time to go home. So I drove, I had to take the Eurotunnel, the train to go to France. So I was driving from the parking lot to the train, and I was stopping often because there was a long queue of cars. And I look on my left and I noticed this object. It was just standing there. I would say maybe 30 meters from the ground or something like that. It was higher than all the light posts in the station. And you can see basically here, the shape of the object was basically similar to this. A lot of windows, originally with 4 colors, like yellow, red, green, and blue. Then the light pattern changed, and what I saw was some sort of plasma discharge, orange plasma or something that basically covered the whole object, going from right to left. And then it dissipated into a single light that you can see blinking even here. And at that point, I started trying to take pictures and videos. And here you see a bit a collection of them. Of course, I was driving, and it was really difficult, and I had to use mostly one hand, even to handle the phone. But basically, you have this object here, which is standing a little above the light posts. And yeah, so I could observe the object according to the photo app, because I can see the timestamp of the first picture and the last one for about 4 minutes. So, it's enough to have a glimpse of the object. And also I did some verification later on to check that there was no strange, big structure that was even above taller than the light post that I hadn't seen. But, I could see that there was nothing under the object. So, but just as a verification. So I actually found videos of people driving along the same path, and also aerial views of the station, and you don't see any such structure. So this was really something. And the estimated size was about 10 meters, definitely bigger than my car. Then actually another interesting thing is that during the sighting, as I will show in the next slide, I also experienced a time anomaly that I will describe later. Then in 2021, I was walking out from my house, and I could only walk a few meters. And then I was with a friend. We noticed this object, which looked originally as 3 red spheres on top of each other. And they were coming towards us, like also at a decent speed, like a car would do, maybe 40, 50 kilometers per hour. And then once we get to the corner of the street, the object goes up. And then I started taking some videos, a couple of videos. It went very high in the sky, so it was difficult for me to even find it sometimes in the video. But anyway, in some snapshots, what I noticed is that the object went from having 3 balls to having 5. And what I can say is that for sure these were not balloons, because actually at the beginning, because it was very rigid, like nothing was moving, I thought it was some sort of drone, but it was huge. I mean, the height was about 2 to 3 meters. Yeah, so it was pretty interesting. Then in more recent times, during the pandemic period, there was a huge protest in Brussels, and at the end, the protest was ending in one of the biggest park in front of the European Commission. I was with three friends, and so I was meditating with them. During the meditation, I got the message: we will show ourselves to you. Just look in the sky. And then after the meditation, basically all my friends got distracted. Two of them went to look for a bathroom, for a restroom. Then the other one went on the ground reading a book. And I kept my eyes, looking at the sky. At some point, I see a gray object basically disappearing in the clouds. I don't really know if that was a UFO or not, but what I know is that in the matter of few seconds, I saw myself surrounded by small sparkles, like thousands of them. And this phenomenon lasted for maybe a minute or something. So that was interesting. But then with the same friends, we also tried an experiment of, let's say, summoning, even though I don't like the term, but now it's popular, let's say, some entity or some UFO. So we went actually meditating in a forest, and in a very desolated place, like in total darkness. So I was focusing on visualizing a portal opening, and then they were channeling, and with open eyes. At some point, one of this friend, who is an astrophysicist, actually got scared because she thought to have seen something behind my back. And so I said, okay, let's stop the experiment. It's not a good idea to continue if there is fear involved. And again, there was a similar situation. We are getting out from the park, and these three friends get distracted. The same one that went on the ground to read the book, this time went to the ground to do her laces, and the other two kept on chatting without looking anywhere. And I was looking at the sky, and I see this sort of giant orb coming from my right and shooting up in a straight line. It had a very small wake, and it was way too large to be some sort of shooting star or something, and it was low altitude, maybe 100 meter or 50 meter from the ground, and probably flying a sort of hypersonic speed. It was really like... and then recently in 2024, so this is my most recent sighting, I did an experiment with one of these friends. We were here looking at the sky, and we tried to meditate, and she was channeling, and we tried to invite somebody to come. And she decided to change position. She went lying on the ground, and in that moment, I stayed at the window, and I put my head out, and I see this orb, more or less of the same size as the one that I saw in 2022, coming from behind my house and shooting in front of me and disappearing once he reached, basically, once it was in line with my window, it just disappeared. And the interesting thing is that then we saw messages popping up on the phone of my friend, and there was somebody in Florida telling us they tried to assassinate Trump. So I saw a UFO in the same moment in which Trump was being shot, which I found a very interesting synchronicity. So about this sighting in Folkestone, which I consider pretty interesting, I mentioned a time anomaly. So what actually happened? When I was in the parking lot, I was still texting with my friend, who was at the time in the airport, and I sent a message at 22:24. Then I started driving, and once I got on the train, I immediately sent a audio telling her, well, I think I saw a UFO. And the difference in time is only 1 minute between when I was in the parking lot and when I sent the message from the train. In reality, I had driven for at least 7 to 10 minutes, stopping all the time, and also having the time for 4 minutes to look at the object, as actually the photo app is testifying. The other interesting thing is that while I was driving, my friend immediately replied to me, but this I only saw once I was on the train, and she put the emoji of a UFO while I actually was looking at one. So this was quite interesting. So actually, I'm not the only one in my family to have had experiences. In particular, there is one uncle who was born in Ethiopia, like also my father, and who goes often in Ethiopia, and he had all kind of experiences, also with spirits and other stuff. But that day, sometime in 2000, he managed to actually catch a UFO on a VHS camera. And here, I want to show you this because I find this video extraordinary. Definitely caught my attention when he showed it to me. And so I will just go a little forward to be sure to capture the moment in which the object appears. The story is that he was outside on a balcony with his sister. They were looking at the sky 6 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly, and he was recording. At some point, you see an object appearing on the top left. Then it disappears for 3 seconds, and then it reappears lower in altitude. And then it tries to zoom in. The object was moving in a frenzy way. But you can get a glimpse of the shape, which almost looks like a tic-tac. And you also see that it's somehow metallic. It's a solid object. You can see some sort of metallic reflection on it. So I'll just show you this quickly. So you will have to look where I am holding the cursor here. There will be an object appearing. Yeah, this is the object. Then it disappears 3 seconds. And then it tries to zoom in with a lot of difficulties. The object tends to move like a ping pong ball, and it tends to get out of shape of frame very easily. But here you see clearly the shape. Then it gets out of frame, and then it will come back once again. That's it. But with naked eyes, the impression they had was to look at some sort of metallic disc, actually. Okay, so I also want to share some other extraordinary, let's say, footage and pictures that I got from a collaborator that also helped me to do some measurement with hyper-spectral cameras that I will show a little later. So this guy is an engineer, electronic engineer. He also works as a forensic technical consultant, but he also collaborates with the university in Italy, in Bologna, especially for medical tests. And so he develops and modifies hyperspectral cameras, so cameras that can see beyond the visible, so in infrared and ultraviolet, and look at energy, frequency, light polarization, and also characterize for instance, the biophotonic field of living beings, both humans, animals, but also plants, for instance. And he uses the same cameras also for sometimes, occasionally, capturing some UFOs. So here, this is the setup of the experiment. He and another guy, this guy, Nicola Tosi, who is a collaborator of Massimo Teodorani, who is a famous, let's say, astrophysicist, also working on Esdalen lights and stuff like that. So they place their devices, their hyperspectral cameras. There was one guy meditating, who is the son of Nicola. You see the sky is perfectly clear. They didn't see any object with naked eyes, but the beauty of these instruments is that they can see beyond the visible. So actually, they capture this object. This is the normal speed, and this is slowed down by a factor of 12. And the picture is zoomed 10 times. So the interesting thing, if you look at this object, is that it has a very particular. Here we are actually looking at the energy spectrum, but in a range between ultraviolet and infrared, so between 300 nanometer and 1,200 nanometer, 269 frames per second. So the object looks almost like a dome with a saucer and some sort of surrounding field, which could be electromagnetic in nature, and it was totally invisible to the eyes. Then this is another another data collection that he did. So on the left, you see the visible light. In the middle, you see an energy spectrum, and on the right, you see a frequency spectrum. And what you will see is that in visible light, you see nothing. In energy, you see objects going all around. And in frequency, you see other objects, but not the same one that you see in energy. So they don't really know how to explain that, but definitely some of these objects were anomalous. The video is pretty short, but you see objects coming in all directions and moving at all speeds. And these are also slowed down by a factor of 10 or 12. And this is another object that they capture, also invisible to the eyes. Okay, so what I said is that in 2018, after this sighting in which I saw all these thousands of lights in the sky, I got some sort of spiritual involvement. And the first, let's say, topic that I researched was Akashic records. So I started meeting people, in particular two girls, who were actually learning how to access memories of past lives. The first one was using a dowsing pendulum to do that, so extensive number of questions to figure out information. And another one was actually coming out of a meditation session with some sort of psychic, in which actually she accessed her records for the first time, and she had very powerful visual, felt energies, and so on. Meanwhile, I had got a book about the Akashic records, and I wanted to have an experience. I mean, to make an experiment. I wasn't really a meditator. I had done some few experiments, but I immediately noticed that I had the ability to quiet my mind instantaneously. So I could basically close my eyes and shut down completely my thought in the matter of few seconds and stay in that state for 1 hour with no, without seeing anything or hearing anything, but I could stay in that state. So I tried this meditation experiment to access the records as suggested in the book in chapter 3, I think. And so the experiment consists in visualizing you walking in a, let's say, in a long road with the trees on the side. And at the end of the road, there is a temple that is supposed to represent what holds the memories of your consciousness. And at the door, you have to sort of visualize a spirit guide opening the door. And this is what I did. I switch off the lights. Let's say, memorize the step of the visualization. I do this visualization, this meditation, and then I get to the door and I had to ask questions. So the questions have to be the most precise possible to get the most precise answers. My first question was the name of the spirit guide, and the second one was, where am I coming from? So in my empty mind, I saw two words flashing. The first one was Andronia. The second one was Sagittarius. So I said, well, that's interesting. I switched on the lights. I went on Google, and here you see the screenshot of my laptop where actually I did the search. Andronia Sagittarius. The first link, meet your spirit guides. So, you know, this was quite counterintuitive. You take two random words and suddenly this, you know, you find the link that connects to what you were trying to achieve. So this was one of my first experiences with the synchronicity. And then after that, I said, okay, this looks interesting. Let me try to fetch more information. So I kept the light switched on, I switched off. I went upstairs, and while brushing my teeth with closed eyes, I kept on with the exercise. So I said, okay, I would like to know the surname, the profession, the name, the surname, and the date of death on my previous incarnation on Earth. And then in my empty mind, I saw an image of war with two soldiers dressed in gray and wearing helmets, almost like during a world war, helping somebody on the ground. Then I saw Charles as a word, single word, and then I saw Dempsey letter by letter, like in a spelling, and then 1941, all in the matter of few seconds. So again, switch on the lights and try to figure out if this guy ever existed. And yeah, indeed, there was a colonel of the US Army called Charles Adam Dempsey, who died in 1941. And there is no chance that I could have ever bumped into this individual, because he's not an historical character. You don't find him in history books. You only find him in like find grave kind of websites. And another interesting thing is that while looking at the few information available, I found out that he had a son who died in his 20s. And he died on the 19th of February. And I'm actually born on the 19th of February. So this was some kind of synchronicity in the synchronicity. But let's go to NHI, my first NHI contact. So I started having this exploration with Akashic records. Then I had some sort of experience with what I could define a ghost at home, moving objects and breaking stuff, which lasted a couple of days. And on top of that, I had already some experiences with UFOs. I wanted somehow to get an external opinion of what was going on. So after I broke my leg, I started actually watching a lot of YouTube videos, and I bumped into this girl called Elizabeth April, who had a channel at the time with like maybe 40,000 subscribers or something. And she was claiming she could access the Akashic records, and she was actually connecting the dots in a way that I particularly liked and resonated with me. So I said, okay, I would like to have a session with this person. So in 2019, January 2019, I had the chance to go to San Diego for a conference, aerospace conference. And I arranged with her to go basically to her place in LA and have a session. During the session, which was 1 hour long, she gave me a lot of information about past lives and also tried to explain some of these phenomena that I had experienced. But one thing in particular attracted my attention. So she told me at some point, I can see a mantis, a giant mantis being behind you is one of your spirit guides. And he tells me his name is Gala. And then during the session, at some point, and it's an important detail because the reason that I will explain later. At some point, we see this hummingbird coming out of nowhere and flying directly against my face, almost as he wanted to hit me. And then he turns and he does the same towards her. So he goes full speed against her face. She moved out of the way not to be hit. And then the bird made a big turn and came back and remained standing in between us, almost as he wanted to assist to our conversation for some minutes. Then we even didn't notice anymore when he left. Why do I tell you about the hummingbird? Because once I was going back from LA to San Diego on the bus, I said, okay, she gave me so many information. Of course, I have audio and everything, but this is one of the mantis being. So I put Gala mantis being on Google, and this is the screenshot. The first link that I found was connecting praying mantis with hummingbird, and that I found very weird. And then I said, okay, let's remove the Gala name, and I couldn't find this link. So I had to use these 3 words in that specific order to find this link. Then the day after, I was in San Francisco, and during the night, I look around and said, okay, if Gala, if you're around me, please give me a sign. So I fell asleep immediately, and I woke up a few minutes later feeling somebody grabbing my waist, shaking me up, almost like your mother would do if you're late for school in the morning, comes there and, touches you and said, oh, you have to go. So I woke up feeling touched, and I freaked out, I screamed, and then I said, oh, but I had asked for a contact. And then a month later, I had another kind of synchronicity. So I developed some sort of skin infection in my leg. I decided to go to the doctor. And before doing that, I said, let me see what Gala wants to tell me today. I put Gala mantis being, and this time the first link that I found was connecting praying mantis with parasites. I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me, well, you probably got a bacterial infection. So she gave me antibiotics, and actually I got rid of my infection. So, and the day after I tried again, Gala mantis being, and there was no way to find the link to the parasites. So it was almost like a way of communicating through this Google search, which was, incredible, but it was the same thing that happened to me when I was trying to do the Akashic Records reading. And then the most extraordinary thing happened 2 months later. I was actually flying to Italy and I was the only one on my row of seats who could have a full view on the wing of the airplane. So it 737 Boeing. And so I basically noticed this scratch, this big scratch. I took a picture and then I said, whoa, this really looks like a mantis. So it even have this pose, kind of very particular pose, that sort of triangular head. You see the eyes, some sort of opening like a mouth or something, and it's a spirit, and it even looks like it's wearing a robe. So I was like, after that, I was like, okay, NHI seems to have some sense of humor, and NHI seems to be able to manipulate matter at will. And actually, a month before, I had done my first past life regression under hypnosis. And during the hypnosis, I saw this spirit guide for the first time. But yeah, let's say a couple of months after what I described, I started experiencing some time anomalies. And the first time I noticed, it happened twice within the same week. So the first time I put an alarm at 9:30 a.m. I wake up, I go to the bathroom, and on my way back to the bed, I see 9:23. So I said, oh, I have 7 minutes and then the alarm will ring. But I'm still tired, so let me sleep. Then I wake up and I said, oh, must be so late. I checked the time and it was 8:03. So basically time had gone back 80 minutes. I said, well, there could be explanations. For instance, maybe I saw 9:23, but it was 7:23, or maybe I dreamt the whole thing. But then 4 days later, in the same week, the alarm this time rang normally at 9 o'clock. That's the time that I selected the day. And then I grab the phone, I deactivate the alarm, and I start doing stuff, reading emails. I go to the bathroom. I would say 30, 35, 40 minutes had passed since the moment I woke up. And then I'm entering the kitchen and I look at the oven clock, 8:47. I say, it's impossible. I check my phone, 8:48, which is normal. There is always 1 minute of delay between the two. And then I checked my alarm and it was deactivated at 9 o'clock. So this time I had two devices which are absolutely not connected. I mean, the oven clock is not connecting to a network that were testifying that I had experienced a time anomaly. And again, I had gone back in time for 30, 40 minutes. Later on, when I started meditating and having more, constructive, contact, I also had experience, like, for instance, I was meditating in a park. I play the music video that I always use for the meditation, which is 35 minutes. The music finishes, and then I noticed that only 14 minutes had passed. And then another time I was with a friend here, and I was complaining because it was 17:27, and I had a meeting at 17:30, so only 3 minutes later, and I needed more time. We both saw the clock of the kitchen going backward to 17:23. So 4 minutes backward, and we both saw it. And then, yeah, I had also some more recent experience during the Soul Conference in San Francisco. I had put an alarm that day at 9:15 a.m. Then the first thing that I see on Facebook was about time. And then I checked my alarm, and the alarm was gone from the list of the alarms on my phone. And then I said, this looks almost like a timeline shift. And then the first email that I see is mentioning shifting timelines explicitly. Okay, then I started having also other experiences that, caught a bit my attention because they were a bit anomalous. So I was in San Francisco again in 2019, so same year. And I was walking in the street and I noticed this strange leaf that was actually moving, almost like forming an infinity sign. And it was, there was no reason why it would do that without falling. And at some point, I also saw this woman that you see here, this woman with dark skin. She noticed the same thing. She went backward. She put her hands on top and bottom of the leaf to be sure that there was no thread, no web, no nothing. And then she looked at me and she said, it's magic. So I kept on looking at this for some time. And then, But another interesting thing that I noticed recently, actually the last time I went to San Francisco, is that there is one of the few roofs that I've seen in the whole city with a pyramid right in front of that. And then at the time in which I saw this leaf, there was a center for healing right there, exactly in the same place. So who knows, maybe there is a special energy in there. But okay, so now speaking about significant events, I told you about my uncle who actually videotaped a UFO in Ethiopia. He was also the one who gave me this picture in 2001. So in 2000, there was the exhibition. I'm from Turin. So there was the exhibition of what they call the Holy Shroud. And people could go and see it. And actually I did it. It didn't really impress me too much, even though I was a Catholic, so to speak. But yeah, I saw it. And then a few months later, I was at a marriage, and this uncle comes and tells me, I got a very interesting picture. I went to a pilgrimage with my wife, and then we met this woman, a friend of them, who actually was taking pictures of the sky with her analogical camera. But when she developed the film, in one of the pictures, instead of the sky, you see this face. And that was actually a pilgrimage to celebrate a new saint, Padre Pio, who is famous to have had stigmata, to have had bilocation abilities, to have made miracles even when he was alive. And I said, wow, this is so interesting. Give me a copy. So I kept a copy of this picture for a long time in a book. And for like 18 years, then I moved to Belgium. And for like 18 years, I never saw this book. And then I found it back, and I found back the picture. And yeah, so what happened is in 2020, at some point, I was already, meditating and doing some experiment with, for instance, sound healing practices with shamanic music, like drumming or singing bowls, even gongs. I had tried a bit of stuff, past life regressions, and every time I was feeling something activating, feeling energies, but never really visuals. The only time I had visuals was that single experiment in 2018 to access my Akashic records. So I was basically, I got in contact with this Belgian friend, a new friend, who told me, I've had experiences as well, and I've been in India, I've been initiated to this Shaktipat by a Swami, so a local guru, and I think it would be a good idea if you are initiated as well. And she said, basically, this can be done remotely. I said, okay, let's do it. So few weeks later, I go to this initiation, so to speak, and it was nothing fancy. So basically, I just had a face-to-face contact with the Swami through the phone. Then we closed the conversation, and all the presents. So it was my friend and other two people. We start meditating freestyle. So, well, I close my eyes. I'm sitting there, and as soon as I close my eyes, I see this guy, this spirit, dressed in white and in lotus pose, like he was meditating with a blue aura all around. And then I saw him standing up and walking towards me next to another entity who also was wearing a robe, but whose face was very extraterrestrial. It was like a triangular face, almost like a dragon, but flat, and also with some scales on top. And then in my mind, I ask, who are you? And I see this writing popping up, Metatron. So at the time, I didn't know much about Metatron. I knew about the Metatron elevator, which is a technique that some use to get out of their body. I tried it too with no success, but I didn't know, for instance, that Metatron is the ascended version, some say, of Enoch in the Book of Enoch. Anyway, so it was an interesting experience also because it was the first time that while meditating, I had such powerful visuals. And then once I finished the meditation, my friend told me, I have to tell you something. I actually saw, and she described the same spirit. So the spirit with the beard and long hair, dressed in purple. And she said, I saw him going behind you, put a hand on your right shoulder and say, this is my worker. And I find it strange that in my mind, I heard like English words because normally she's Flemish, so she speaks Dutch, and every message she gets is in Dutch. But he said, well, probably there was a message for you. And another interesting thing is that in the matter of few days, I had another session with with a friend who is, let's say, doing some sort of shamanic sessions just with music, like with drumming and singing bowls. I had already participated to some of them, but this time it was remote because it was locked down. We couldn't meet in person. She said, okay, I want to offer this for your birthday. So I'm there lying on my bed with the laptop on my left, playing this shamanic drumming that she had already pre-recorded. And wherever she was, at her place, she was remotely trying to do something, but the connection was already closed. Like it was like we reach out after the session. And so first 5 minutes, I don't feel absolutely anything. Then I start feeling a tingling, starting from the tip of my fingers that propagate up to the shoulders, and both my arms are paralyzed. At that point, also my head is lifted up a little bit, and I start feeling an extraordinary energy, a strong vibration throughout my body, making it feel like I was spinning on a rotating table. Then my eyelids start flickering. And then I have this visual. I see again this face, the same face. And then I see a portal opening with some entities around, entities that I already seen before in a past life regression with the method of Dolores Cannon that I did 1 month before, the QHHT. Oh, but before showing you that, I want to give some more comment on this image. So at some point, I got familiar with this painting, which is called The Prince of Peace, which is a masterpiece, which was painted by this girl when she was only 8 years old, a prodigy. And she actually said that she was having vivid contacts with the spirit of Jesus, and that's what she was painting. Then there have been researchers who actually compare this face with the Holy Shroud face, and they found actually a perfect match. So I said, okay, if the spirit is connected to Jesus, as I think, because actually my friend got the message that this guy was called Sananda, and if you research a little bit in some spiritual circle, they connect Sananda with an ascended version of Jesus. So there was some sort of connection there. I said, okay, if it's related to Jesus, let's see if the features match with the Holy Shroud and with this painting. And actually, I overlay all the images and increase a little bit the transparency. And the transition between the three is really pretty smooth, actually. All the proportions of the face are matching, and even the extremities of the neck, for instance, if you look at the neck in this painting, match perfectly with this sort of light that is under this face. I mean, these are 3 independent sources belonging to 3 different people and periods, and it's pretty interesting. So I actually mentioned that during this shamanic session, I saw a portal opening with some entities around, and the entities were looking like this. So white, long neck, round face, round eyes, and sort of piggy nose. Actually, I got in contact with a journalist some years later, and at some point this journalist told me, this picture make me think about this one, and she pulled this out of her phone. So this was drawn by a person that she interviewed who, figured out to be abducted under hypnosis, and she drew this kind of entity after the hypnosis, which actually matches almost perfectly with some unusual features that you don't see normally with people, in contact with greys or something, or reptilians, I don't know. And then in more recent times, this friend that I mentioned, the engineer who works with hyper-spectral cameras, started having, started taking videos of people that he found interesting. And sometimes if he looks at some specific field, let's say frequency range, people don't appear to be human. And that was a case. For this skinny girl, he said, well, I think this woman was not a normal human being. And when I saw this picture, it made me think about what I saw under hypnosis, or let's say under hypnosis and then during the shamanic session. But okay, so after a few months, let's say after a few weeks from this experience of seeing this Sananda spirit, I started meditating more regularly. Regularly means at the time meant once a week, always at the same time, 11:11 in a certain park. One day I decided to go to another park. I found a place to meditate. I found this spot. And then I started meditating using the shamanic music as in the background. And suddenly I felt the same energies. And then my eyelids started flickering. I saw again Sananda, and I saw two groups of entities. On the left, actually, contrary to what I said in Ross' interview on NewsNation, on the left, I saw green beings. So they were all like wearing robes and hoods. You couldn't distinguish features, but it was a group of entities emanating green energy, and on the right, blue. And actually, I asked, who are you? And on the left, I saw Pleiadians, and on the right, I saw Arcturians. I already knew I was connected to Pleiadians because of other experiences that I didn't describe. I didn't know about the Arcturians. After that, they told me, well, you have connected to a Stargate, and you can help people to connect to have this kind of connection. And also, this can be used for healing. I said, oh, wow, this is great because I need healing myself. So at the time, I had a ligament injury on my left wrist. It was a relapse, and the previous time I had to take a cortisone injection a year before, and then I had an accident. It relapsed. So I said, okay, can you fix my wrist? It was so bad that up to the day before, I couldn't basically lift a cup, an empty cup, without feeling pain up to the elbow. So I do a meditation. I go for a meditation with the intention to be healed. But I forget about that because in the meantime, I also had to go back home and then come back to the park. When I'm leaving the park after the meditation, I hear this internal voice, check your wrist. And then I check my wrist. I was like, it feels like I don't have any pain. And then I started moving it in all directions, putting weight, lifting weight, pushing. It was gone. And basically this pain never came back. Now in 5 years, completely pain-free. So that basically told me there is something here, and I think I will listen to what these contacts tell me. So I started meditating with other people, and other people started having experiences similar to the one that I described. So feeling energies, seeing entities, and then sometimes receiving messages, emotional healing. In few cases, also some physical benefits, so to speak. In one of these meditations, this was on the 21st of June 2020. It was a day of particular alignment, astronomical alignment with different planets. And so I did a meditation with 7 friends, all women. We went to the same park, and one of these friends went into trance channeling. And so she was actually conveying messages both in English and in languages that we couldn't understand. But she basically guided us through a meditation involving a Merkaba, a spinning Merkaba, to activate our light bodies. And then we did this meditation. During the meditation, I was seeing some of these entities that were talking through my friend. And also, I was feeling extraordinary energies to the point that after 25 minutes of meditation, I was almost like unable to move. I couldn't stand up. I had to stay there like 5 minutes, and then I could try to move some steps. And we decided to reconnect 10, 15 minutes later. So we reconnect, and the same thing happened. So my friend went into trance channeling instantaneously. And she started conveying messages, and in particular, they had some messages to me. Then after that, I went home, and I found my neighbor that with whom I never had any interaction before, just in front of my door. And she said, well, you know, somebody living in front of you told me that my cat entered your window from the street. I said, oh, I find it hard to believe, but okay, let's do it. Let's check if your cat is here. So I have, like, you know, 2-story house with the basement. We check everywhere. I don't have much furniture, living alone. And also a lot of the rooms were already locked because I never used them. But anyway, we check everywhere. We close the door to be sure that if there is a cat, it doesn't escape, nothing. We go to the basement, nothing. I said, sorry, maybe your friend was wrong about the cat. For 3 days, I had no sign of the presence of this cat. But while meditating, I was getting the message that this cat had been sent to my place to give me some evidence for the non-linearity of time. I was like, okay. So I didn't really know what to expect. But at some point, after 3 days, I wake up one morning, I find a completely ripped off trash bag and then on the ground floor, and then on the second floor, on the, let's say on the carpet in a bathroom, I found some poo. So I said, okay, the cat somehow is here. And then, so that night, I decided to set a trap. So I put some crackers, and then I put a laptop to record in my living room. And then, it recorded for 9 hours, 18 minutes, 18 seconds, which is interesting, 999, if you like synchronicities. But after 56 minutes, you finally see the cat entering the room. It will jump on the sofa, then the image freezes for 6 minutes. Of course, I will speed up in that part. And then there is the image goes 100 times faster, and there is only one frame in which you see the cat in the middle of the room, and then it disappears. And then everything goes back to normal speed. So I find this quite interesting, especially being familiar with the Schrödinger cat. I always thought that this could be maybe the only video showing something related to the Schrödinger cat. Definitely will show an anomaly. And so you will have to focus your attention at some point after the cat freezes in this location between the sofa and the drums. And you will see just one very fast image. And then I will slow it down 100 times, and you will see. So it should be coming soon. Here we go. And then if you slow down 100 times, then there is this single frame in which the cat is here, and then it's gone. So, well, the message was kind of consistent with what happened, because you see something freezing, then accelerating, and then slowing down. So maybe this is a proof of nonlinearity of time, but it remains a very curious synchronicity. But also, I started getting the message that I could reproduce the same phenomenon. And I said, okay, let's do it. So I was basically recording myself while meditating. And these entities with whom I was in contact, they were telling me, you have to visualize a sphere with an inscribed cube, with an inscribed tetrahedron spinning in your heart chakra. And the more they spin, the more you generate energy, and then eventually you will see similar phenomenon. So I started recording myself, and independently from the length of the meditation, if it was 8 minutes or if it was 30 or 1 hour, towards the end of the meditation, you see an effect like that. So the image freezes, and then for some time the audio keeps on working, and then you see the image going super fast, and then it goes back to normal. But then, if you take individual screenshots, you see that there are some anomalies like this one. You see myself in 2 different positions, not fully materialized. You can see the lamp behind my back, basically. And this is not normal for, like, when you are in recording mode. You cannot really achieve this kind of effect. So, but then you say, okay, maybe there is something wrong with your laptop. Well, actually, I got similar effects also on other devices, for instance, on the iPhone. I was in a conversation with my friend who was in Chicago, and she was sending messages before and after the meditation. And the meditation was 8-minute meditation. The only message that she sent me during the meditation is shifted 4 minutes in her phone with respect to mine. So in her phone is 23, in my phone is 27. And then everything goes back to normal after the meditation. So to think that everything is a coincidence or it's a bit, I don't believe in that. Then I decided to contact the Institute of Noetic Sciences to do some more scientific investigation in lab conditions. So I said, I have this budget, what can you propose? I wanted to test actually the effect not on myself, but on meditators that were connecting to me somehow, just by watching a pre-recorded video in which I was telling them, I'm gonna connect you to a Stargate. So they proposed to do let's say EEG scans on these 11 volunteers, all expert meditators. And the protocol was basically a control meditation, which was freestyle for 11 minutes. And then there was my video, which was also 11 minutes, in which I was just telling them I connected to Stargate, and then the rest of the video was muted. In reality, there was singing bowl music, but we couldn't pollute the signal acquisition, so muted. And then, so here, for instance, in the results, these are scalp topographies. On the left, you see the results for the control meditation. In the middle, you see the results for the Stargate meditation. And then in the last column, every time you see a red dot, that corresponds to one of the 64 electrodes for the EEG system. So when you see it red, means that there is a considerable statistically significant difference between the data of the control meditation with respect to the Stargate. And then in horizontal, you have delta waves, theta waves, alpha, beta, gamma. So for instance, for subject 1, you see that, in the delta, alpha, beta, gamma, all the electrodes are stimulated considerably. There is a considerable difference in the stimulation of these electrodes and the brain waves. And on top of that, these 4 subjects out of the 11 had some, significant experience. They felt energies, they saw entities, like light beings, for instance. One had some sort of psychedelic experience, and another one even had a feeling of having a vivid past life experience in which he was also feeling, let's say, a physical sensation. Then I also did some tests on myself. Well, let's say I connected to some neuroscientists here in Belgium. We did fMRI. I got the results after a lot of pressure because it was an unfunded project. So they didn't have time to process the data after a lot of stress. I mean, we found some, they gave me some, let's say, some data which show some, let's say, enhanced activation in some portion of my brain when I meditate. But they say, in order to do a proper investigation, you should get the data and find somebody else that has the time to do it. So I haven't found anybody yet, but I can get the data if needed. Then I did some tests with the hyper-spectral cameras, as I announced before. So this was in Milan in 2023. Actually, the interesting thing is that I did the test the same day in which the interview with David Grush came out on NewsNation, which is a good day. So basically, I was with this engineer and with another collaborator of his. They placed 2 cameras. One was a hyperspectral camera, another one was a polarimetric camera. So used to characterize the polarization of the light, and actually is a device that they use in space agencies. So I was meditating, and for like 3-5 minutes, I did 3 meditation with let's say some breaks. In one of the breaks, they also tested the journalists that invited us for the experiments. So they immediately noticed anomalies. Like they saw, for instance, that in this specific frequency spectrum, my head was, let's say, showing the light corresponding to the highest frequency they can measure, while normally this light is only distributed in the eyes of people. So, there is this saying from Leonardo da Vinci, the eyes are the window for the soul. They actually can demonstrate it when looking at the biophotonic field for everybody, but not for me, at least out of the people that they tested so far. But these other people were not contactees, or they were not people who had conscious experiences or with ETs, for instance. So then if you compare, another thing that you notice is that when I start meditating, there is some sort of toroidal field that forms around my head and occasionally forms a cross. So they had already seen the toroidal field around meditators, but they never saw this cross forming. And you will see it later in the next slide a little better. So here you can see another visualization of the difference in frequency distribution from 0 to 50 hertz. By the way, I have to say, in the interview with Ross on NewsNation, I also said something wrong. I said this was energy, this was actually frequency. And then these are actually a measurement with the polarimetric camera showing that, so basically they pick some points all around my body, and they saw that as soon as I start meditating, there is some sort of field forming around me that changes the polarization in every single point. Now, normally to change the polarization of the light has to go from one medium to another, for instance, I don't know, from air to water, or cross a plasma, or cross a very strong electromagnetic field, or cross a gravitational field. So it's a bit unusual. And They also did, they're able to visualize somehow the activity of the pineal gland. They did some tests with other people. And with me, they analyzed the same data just by focusing on my pineal gland. Suppose that you can drill a hole in my head, and then more or less this is the region where you would have the pineal gland. So they see a torsional field, which they have seen before, but they never saw these flashes of light coming out of people. And also here in the interview with Ross, I said something wrong. I said that the different colors were corresponding to different frequencies. In reality, the different colors correspond to different directions of the photons. And here you actually see this cross, which was one of the things that they found more surprising. Then recently I did some more tests. I went to this place, hotspot for UFO activity. People take pictures of entities or UFOs, since decades. And we did another test of meditation using another hyperspectral device. So this was the third one that was tested on me. This is made in China, but then they had to enable some special feature to do what they wanted to look at. And we did I did a meditation, and there was another guy that did a meditation as well, an expert meditator. Here you are seeing a time series. So instead of seeing a video, here in different squares, you see a different time, and let's say a frequential distribution in the biophotonic field at different times. So normally, each of the entries in this matrix should be filled. You should see something in there, and you see it for the other guy. But for me, for most of the time, there is no signal. It's almost like the camera was not able to detect my frequential signature. And they said, we tested many meditators with this camera, and we never seen anything like that. So there is definitely something forming around me when I meditate. This is a summary of the anomalies that I experience. Also, I will show you later, like in few slides. We are almost at the end. That I also experienced some electromagnetic interference on the phone. But yeah, so this is a major experience that I had on the 12th October 2022. So in the middle of the night, I felt something touching me. I opened my eyes and I see this giant light being. It was like looking like humanoid, but wearing a robe and a hood. I couldn't distinguish any facial feature. I just saw this giant, 8 feet tall entity. And in the lower part of the body, there was a spinning vortex of blue light. And imagine you open your eyes, you see that in the middle of your bedroom. And I was like just freaked out. I screamed, and then I jumped on the bed, ready to get out, and then it disappeared. And then the interesting thing is that 1 week before, during a meditation, I was asking, why don't you ever show yourself in the physical? And the message I was receiving is that even if you saw all kinds of entities with your eyes closed while meditating, if we appear in front of you, you will be scared. And I said, well, no, it's not possible. And actually it happened. But you have to say it was a bit unfair to show up in the middle of the night in these circumstances. And then I want to conclude with just three more slides to show other effects. Let's say 3-4 slides, other effects that I experienced. First one is the increased connectivity with the animals, wild animals, birds, different kind of birds, and also insects. I did some time telepathic experiments to say, for instance, I would like to see you when I go meditating to a robin, and then I go there, I meditate, and I open my eyes, and there is a robin looking at me. And then one other time I was meditating in the forest, and I see this entity which looked like almost like an ancient god, with like Egyptian god, maybe completely white, with a head like a bird, and then the shoulders like a human. And I said, okay, if it's true that I have this connection, give me a sign. So I go out from the forest, I go drinking a coffee in a terrace, and suddenly from around the corner there is a magpie that comes and starts biting my jeans, as you see here. And then I go back home the same day, and in my backyard there is a small bird. These are called black-hat chickadees, who was stuck there. He couldn't fly out. So I took him home, and as soon as I took him home, he flew right under the writing love. which I found very interesting. And then also another chickadee got trapped some other time, and then I had the chance to pet a crow, which is something, and all this happens typically during after meditation. And then I also did an experiment for attracting a dragonfly. So we had just meditated with a friend, and we put our hand out. We think, we love you, don't be afraid. There were like dragonfly flying around. She comes first to my friend, and then she comes to me, and she kept on coming to me. And till when I decided to go, he was just not afraid of me and would stay there forever. And you can see it here. And then you will see later, I try to even put the other hand close to it to see if it would get scared, and it wouldn't get scared. Like here. And the week after, we tried the same experiment, and the same thing happened. The dragonfly landed on our hands. So here you see I put my hand there. Normally an insect, should be scared and move out, but no. And then another experiment actually happened during the right after the Scientific Coalition event in Huntsville, where I actually met Jim, and for the first time. And so I was meditating with a couple of people, I was seeing, during the meditation, I was seeing an entity which looked like an insectoid, like a grasshopper, completely white, on my right. And I was also hearing royals. I opened my eyes, and the guy on my left tells me, I just saw a grasshopper landing next to you. And so we go and check. There was this gate. There was this grasshopper. So imagine, with closed eyes, I was seeing a grasshopper entity. And on top of that is standing on elite. And I was hearing royals, elite royals. So again, synchronicity after synchronicity. And then this is the last kind of effects that I can report, electronic malfunctioning. So I was meditating. We are getting out of the park. And I feel a heating on my head. I look up. There is this giant cloud, which had this, this kind of edges. It almost looked like a diamond. And I try to take a picture. The screen on my phone becomes completely black with a blinking light in the middle, and then it moves on the right and disappears. And then it kept on doing it for some time. I had lost my control. And then I said, let me take this picture. I managed to take the picture. But then later on, I experienced similar stuff, and my phone turns into this. So instead of showing this during, in the photo app, it shows me that. And then, for instance, here, before meditation, this is what I was seeing in the sky. After meditation, I see this, and I tell my friend, they tell me it's them. In that moment, my phone turns into this. And I conclude with this one. This is my last slide. It's a crazy one. But let's say that I started doing sessions in which I access the Akashic records for people. I did probably 150 of them during the last 5 years. And in particular, I did sessions also to healers sometimes, people who is training pranic healing, Reiki, shamanic healing. So this friend who actually worked at the European Commission, she asked me for a second session after a year. And during that session, at some point, I saw a dragon, a golden dragon, that basically did some sort of, I don't know, work on her, some sort of activation. And the interesting thing is that after the session, I go taking a coffee downtown, and then the latte art that I got on my coffee was this one, which is really reminding of a dragon. It's like, what's the chance? And then recently, while looking at the photos of that specific day, I figured out that before the session, I actually took another flat white in another place just here next door. And they actually did something strange. They put this face, which looks a bit like a reptile or a dragon, I could say, big mouth and slit eyes. I mean, synchronicities. It's the language of the universe. This is what I think. And sometimes, it's you experience miracles that you would never believe possible. So I think I can close here. Should I stop sharing? Well, stop sharing.
Andrea, you are a Renaissance man. You combine it all. You're an experiencer, you're a scientist, you're a technician, you're a meditator. It's a wonderful thing to experience a single person who's trying to encompass, a 360 experience of what many people have in part, but
Mhm.
not in the whole. I'm particularly struck by your uh, seeming capacity to turn off the what is called the internal dialogue of your mind, because
Mhm.
that's really key
I think.
to the kinds of opening and the healings that you talk about. So, first instance, I just want to acknowledge your industriousness
I'm
on,
very
on,
motivated.
on all fronts.
I'm very motivated. I'm very curious by nature. So,
Where you're pushing the boundaries here. Now, I want to just start because I'm not sure I got the full import of what
Mhm.
you were saying about Trump
Okay,
and the synchronicity that you experience with the Trump
assassination.
assassination attempt. Provide a few more details as to how that
Well,
transpired.
no, so basically, I saw this orb as I described. I mean, normally I don't do this kind of experiments to try to, summon a UFO. We decided to do it that day without, and it happened. And then immediately after, we noticed that there were messages popping up on the phone of my friend, and the messages were about somebody. I mean, from Florida, from somebody saying Trump. Somebody tried to assassinate Trump. So it seemed another thing that I didn't say is that this orb was a bit interesting because it was like these discs of this orb of light, and then it had a split tail. Suppose like the tongue of a snake is like split like this. I saw something like that behind this low altitude orb. And anyway, of course, I found that interesting. And then later on in meditation, I asked, there was some significance why did I see that in that particular moment? And he said that they intervened, they actually intervened to prevent the assassination, and that an assassination of that kind would have created chaos, and they cannot afford to have that kind of chaos.
Really? So you were given a message that the ETs interceded,
It is or cos or
or
angelic,
whoever,
whoever, somebody intervened, yeah.
that there was an intervention, a divine intervention.
Which is
Because
something that.
that's what struck people, is that under all circumstances, he should have been shot in the head, actually, and killed. But he turned right at the last moment, and that turn saved his life.
Mhm.
So, it reminds me, if it's true, something that happened to me when I was during my Cambridge days. I was downtown, and I was deep in thought. I wasn't paying attention. I stepped off the curb to cross the street,
Mhm.
and I felt physically, like you felt that tug that woke you up. Physically, I felt someone grab my stomach and pull me back on the curb.
Mhm.
And when I was pulled back, I was a little startled. I thought somebody had done it, a person. And I looked around and there was nobody there, but a car just whished by. And
Mhm.
it was a split second from being hit, sort of like John Mack was hit.
Mhm.
Uh, but something intervened, and I've always attributed it to a guardian angel, and it's not happened to me since. But
Absolutely.
I have had the experience, as you reporting, of an intelligence, an entity from the invisible realm,
Mhm.
physically intervening in a way, in that case, that saved me from a pretty severe accident. So,
I had I had this too in South Africa. I mean, I was running down a cliff and I lost the balance, and I should have normally, for the law of physics, because of the momentum I had, I should have rolled down, and I felt this wind pushing me in the middle of the chest and putting me back on my feet.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
another
Well,
similar case.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we want to go into the after chat in a moment here, but this is so rich. I want to probe one aspect and get your deeper understanding, because I had a meeting over the weekend, and we were talking about the ET issue, and the person said, for the thousandth time that you hear it, well, why don't they just land on the White House lawn, go
Mhm.
into the Oval Office and arrest Trump or do whatever they're going to do?
Mhm.
And so this mystery of the fact that they're real, but they stay gossamer.
Mhm.
They come in and out. They're an orb, and once you try to get them, they shape shift to something else. And we want them to be like us. We want them to be physical. We want them to march into the White House and tell them, who's who and what's what. And but they don't.
Mhm.
But nevertheless, they're still present. Now, how do you understand this phenomenon of intelligences from the invisible realm,
Mhm.
able to shape shift and appear to you in the way that they've appeared to you and thousands of other people in different ways,
Mhm.
but nobody lands on the White House lawn? How do
Well,
you understand the reasoning for that?
yeah, first of all, I align with those who think that this, let's say, life on this planet, human life on this planet is an experiment of some kind. So we are we have to go through some sort of tests and challenges, and this not just now, but since when humanity was born. Then I also understand that there is a principle of non-intervention, which is some sort of universal law to which the benevolent entities, let's say, adhere. They respect this non-intervention. They can suggest you something, but they cannot enforce it. And what I believe also is that there are some negative forces that actually try to bypass this non-intervention but
Hmm.
through manipulation. And this is what you can see with the propaganda machine and other means that the elite of the world sometimes use. So there is this conflict behind the scene, but some want you to find a way to solve your own problems. They can inspire you, for instance, through dreams. They can inspire you through synchronicities, which is a language that sort of is supposed to guide you somehow. But you have to understand how the language works first. And a lot of people don't have the patience, don't have the eye to see actually these hints that maybe could make their life easier at 360 degrees in their career, in their personal life, in whatever. So,
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think it's a matter, as I've understood it, it's a matter that in part, because they're gossamer, it's it's a challenge for them to get as dense as we humans are.
also, definitely.
So them to just become an apparition, like they appear to you and then kind of go
Mhm.
off, is sort of in some ways what they can easily do.
Yeah.
And I've heard many experiencers say that they've been told by the ETs that one of the reasons why they're fascinated with humans is because we're so dense.
Yeah.
Our emotions are dense. Our
Mhm.
physicality is dense. Our thinking is dense. We have to use language, words to speak. We're not able to speak in ET and mental telepathy because we're too dense. And
Mhm.
there's people, not a couple people, but exceptional people like yourself and Bertie Jaworski and others who do have that faculty. Um, but that's at the level of physics. That's also an aspect of why they don't appear with the physicality that we would like in our denseness. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah, and I also think actually that we don't really know since we are not able to touch a orb or an entity when we see it. We really don't know if it's there or it's just a projection in our mind. So they may just remote view. You are like
Exactly.
in this state in which you receive images and you think they're real, dense there, but they're not. They're just projected on your mind. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. And then just a final question. Would love to hear from you personally. How has this journey changed you? I mean, if I can't imagine if I'd had all the experiences you've had. I'd be flat on the floor,
Well, I have to say, it has been exciting. My journey, let's say, started later because I could say I've been on this journey really more engaged on this since 2018. Before it was just sometimes something happens, but you don't connect the dots and you don't try to. But yeah, it's been inspiring and yeah, it motivates you. I mean, I don't know, at all levels. It also this connection to nature, to animals. I didn't have this connection to birds before. I wouldn't even notice they're singing, they're chirping. Now I get excited just by, interacting with a bird. And it changed me profoundly. And I would say it also changed a lot people around me that are on similar journey, and I see these little miracles and little changes happening every day, like
Yeah. Yeah.
fascinating.
Well, it's so consistent. I just finished John Mack's book, Abduction. And because I'm lecturing on his book in our Great Books course over the next couple of months. And what you're saying is so profound because that was his observation of the people that went through his therapeutic process around them being abducted in their case. And almost without exception, the people that went through the experience became more sensitive to the natural world, like
Wow.
the singing of the birds,
Hmm.
um, the colors of the clouds, the blossom of a rose. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, it was like they were able to look at the world, particularly the world of nature, not only with fresh eyes,
Hmm.
as if something had been peeled off
Absolutely.
their eyes, which had blurred them from before, but they became more compassionate and more empathetic, not only with nature, but with their fellow humans. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And also changed my diet. I became vegan, almost exclusively vegan, so no animal or no fish. And it was a big challenge because I was a fish lover, a huge fish lover for me. But yeah, suddenly I started having experiences, and one of the messages was that they wanted me to not harm any animal. And so I did. And it pays back because then you feel this great connection and you really
Yeah,
experience it. It's like
yeah,
something energetic. It's not just,
yeah,
so
yeah. Well,
I agree.
what you're saying is what Jane Goodall has said, who's been a friend for many years. She was at the first State of the World Forum, and we went out to dinner, and everybody ordered, and then Jane ordered vegetarian, and one of the people around the table asked her, and she said, "Well, being a vegetarian increases my solidarity with the natural world and with
Mhm.
the animal world because I'm making a commitment not to eat them."
I agree. I can agree.
And,
I,
seems kind of simple, but it's actually quite profound.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Dr. Andrea Lani, everyone, and Andrea's going to uh, join the after chat so you can deepen your dialogue with him. And then tomorrow, I'm going to have the session. I want to talk about how the State of the World Forum is emerging and this meta conversation that we're seeking to convene around how the ET issue that Dr. Lani and others have been describing can assist humanity in dealing with its code red issues. Because climate change, artificial intelligence, pandemics, human health, we've got a lot of issues that if we don't solve may um, do irredeemable damage to human civilization and infrastructure. And yet at the same moment, we're being visited by extraterrestrials in palpable ways, as Dr. Lani has indicated, all with a message for humanity to wake up. So how you bring those together, it's never been done before, where the extraterrestrial issue and code red issues are being brought together in a single dialogue that we hope to convene between 2025 and 2030. Now, an important aspect of what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow is the impact of this on humanity rising, because we're going to have to shape shift humanity rising quite significantly in order to allow me and Georg and others on the Ubiquity team to do what's necessary. So anyway, that will be tomorrow on Humanity Rising. But for now, let us celebrate a man who is trying to both investigate the ETs while he's experiencing them and scientifically measure that which cannot be measured all at the same time. So he'll join the after chat. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now. See you tomorrow.
See
Thank
you
you,
later.
Andrea.
Thank you very much.